I know one of the programs that I have seen is called Keep Your Privates Private. Is that something that's evolved from that? And tell me more about that program.
Yes. So that program actually evolved from Windsor Police contacting us about 2010,
Mm-hmm.
11, saying, listen, we're getting an influx of referrals for kids that
Mm-hmm.
are sexting. We don't want to be charging them all because if we charge
Yeah.
them, they're going to be
Yeah.
charged with child pornography, which is a very serious offense.
I don't know if people know that. I
No.
wonder if you could explain the actual charge around that, because like teenagers are just sending each other pics and they don't realize that it can be an offense. Hi there. Welcome back to Anchored Minds, the space where we dive into mental health, neuroscience, and the human experience. So today we're tackling a topic that every parent, everybody, parent, teacher, social worker, youth worker, you should hear this. The massive shift we're seeing in child and youth mental health and how the digital world is changing the way kids think, feel, and connect. My guest today is Joanna Conrad, Executive Director of the Youth Diversion Program in the Windsor-Essex area. Welcome, Joanna. Joanna spent years working on the front lines with young people, leading programs on prevention, education, and online safety. She's seen it all, the good, the bad, and the truly concerning when it comes to what's happening inside kids' minds and on their screens. So this is different than our first episode, as Joanna's role is more education. So we get into the nitty-gritty of online dangers. So together, we're unpacking what's myth, what's real, what parents should actually be afraid of when it comes to internet use, and mental health. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Joanna. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you out. So one thing you should know is that when I saw Joanna speak about 3 years ago, it was an anti-human trafficking conference, and she just lit up the stage and she just had this presence. And when I started this podcast, I was like, oh, I need to have that lady on here. So I'm so excited to have you here. Maybe we could start off with a little bit of what you do, so that to give you some context of your role in our community.
Well, thank you for that. That's really sweet. That's the loveliest compliment. In terms of what I do at Diversion, so I'm the executive director, and oftentimes that role entails just a lot of administrative work. However, over the course of the years, my role has changed, and a lot of it is also education and outreach, in that there's an educational component specifically to parents. And that came in a roundabout way in that my staff are oftentimes quite young. So when we started really looking at how to educate parents, we were having conversations around the table, and my staff were like, well, you're the only one with kids, and like, you're
Kind
the
of fell
oldest,
on you.
so it seems as if it's most appropriate, and it made sense at the time, and so that's really how I started doing the parent presentations, simply because I felt like I had the most credibility, only because I was the oldest and had children and was able to speak to that a little bit, and maybe, I guess, relatable in that sense.
You also have a degree.
Yeah? Yes, but my degree's in law. It has nothing to do with,
yeah.
So, at the end, that's sort of how that came about. But the education component became also, from my perspective, in that I was deeply invested in learning about the topic. And I was deeply invested in it because at Youth Diversion, we saw a shift in the type of youth that were coming our way. And so, of course, that's my job to know that, right? In terms of the trends, what we're seeing, how we're going to address it, whether what we're doing is working, and how do we improve upon our services. And so all of that, are things that I'm interested in regardless, or need to be interested in. And so I started, really investing my time into research, into looking at what's happening in society.
Yeah.
But also just like
that shift in population.
Right.
So
Firsthand
coming
experience.
your way? Like, like the youth coming your way, how do they come your way?
So I've been at Diversion since 2009. It's been a long time. And when I first started, young people were just coming to us simply from the police or the courts. So they were being referred because they had made a poor choice, an illegal poor choice, and they were being sent our way to essentially like right their wrongs, right? A diversion referral. And at the time, the majority of the kids that were coming through were for shoplifting, mischief unders, some vandalism. Again, I like not to minimize any offenses, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, I guess, in terms of the way we dealt with them, in terms of what we were seeing. And we oftentimes dealt with them the same way in that, a shoplifter was a shoplifter was a shoplifter, right? There wasn't a lot of variation.
Yeah.
And around 2010, 2011, again, it wasn't long before we started realizing that the youth were changing. And it was as if there was a Pandora box. Every young person was a Pandora box, where as soon as you opened it, you simply didn't know what you were getting. And it was, a lot of issues that, again, were contributing to what they were doing and how they were behaving and all of these contributing behaviors. And so I was like, something's going on here, right? And
Yeah.
again, now in retrospect, when I look back on it, again, we started realizing what Jonathan Haidt, I don't know if you've heard of The Anxious Generation,
Yeah.
but when he came out with the book, The Anxious Generation, I was like, yes, finally,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
someone who is
Yeah, he's really in the
speaking.
spotlight
Yes.
right now. My first guest too, we were talking about that and how the digital impact of that. Was there something specifically in that book that really stood out for you?
Oh, everything. Like,
Yeah.
it was as if somebody was finally validating all of the things that I knew, because again, I mean, I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah.
And to me, it's always just, I believe in common sense, right? And that's what I was going off of too, because again, we were able to draw similarities between behaviors that we were seeing in youth and again, what they were getting into. Our risk assessments would ask kids what they were getting
Right.
into, what they were spending time on. So we started really seeing similarities between, again, social media exposure to, and the types of
Yes.
offenses that we were seeing. So when he came out with that book, I was like, yes, yes, yes. And again, it was really part and parcel to this great rewiring, right? And that is what
Mhm.
stood out probably the most, in that their exposure to social media specifically, and just devices, smartphones specifically, again, even like narcissism, when you look at, the front facing
Yeah.
camera and all of that, has changed kids, has changed society, and has changed the way in which they behave.
So tell me more about that. Like, do you have any stats that would help us understand how things have changed in terms of the types of crimes perhaps kids are they're crossing the line, right? You were saying because of the laws, how they come to you. So has it gone beyond the shoplifting or what are you seeing?
Oh, yes. So, I mean, yes. So back in 2009, we only worked with kids that were referred to us by the police and the courts. But in 2010, again, we saw there was a need for outreach services. And so we expanded our
Mhm.
services at the time to accept referrals from parents, because parents were coming to us saying as well that they wanted their children involved in our programs, who were not yet involved in the criminal justice system as a preventative piece. And so again, at the time we thought, okay, well, we're going to expand our services to the age of 10, thinking that would be
Yeah.
proactive. And then as soon as we did that, we realized that was not proactive enough.
Wow.
And so just, fast forward to 2025, our services are now 6 to 26, right? So,
Into adult, well, your brain's still growing at the age of 24, 25
right,
is when it stops growing. So that makes sense that you would have services up to the age of 26.
right.
So I know one of the programs that I have seen is called Keep Your Privates Private. Is that something that's evolved from that? And tell me more about that program.
Yes. So that program actually evolved from Windsor Police contacting us about 2010,
Mm-hmm.
11, saying, listen, we're getting an influx of referrals for kids that
Mm-hmm.
are sexting. We don't want to be charging them all, because if we charge
Yeah.
them, they're going to be
Yeah.
charged with child pornography, which is a very serious offense.
I don't know if people know that. I
No.
wonder if you could explain the actual charge around that, because like teenagers are just sending each other pics and they don't realize that it can be an offense.
That's right. Yes. So it's threefold in that child pornography is either the manufacturing, the distribution, or the possession of child pornography, which includes any image of a child that's under the age of 18 in a nude or semi-nude fashion and a sexual like pose, right? So again, all of that would be
Mm-hmm.
considered child pornography. And what kids and parents maybe also don't understand is that if they take a picture of themselves in a sexual fashion, that is manufacturing child pornography.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they send it, they're distributing child pornography. And if they
Yes.
receive it and they are in possession of it, or even if it's of themselves, they are in possession of child pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Very serious offenses. And if they're sharing it in group chats,
Yeah.
if they're sharing it in whatever platforms, again, very serious offenses and consequences for that matter. So that is what we were dealing with. And at the time we developed a program. Again, this was very taboo. It was a taboo subject. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Parents thought the more you talked about it, the more they would do it. Which again, at this point, I feel like, I mean, it's a little bit silly, I think, to say
We know that that's not true
it's
now.
not.
Yeah.
But anyhow, nobody was talking about it. So we
Yeah.
came up with this program, and it was, again, back then we didn't know what we didn't know either. So it was sort of like, hey, don't do it. It's against the law. Like, don't do it. That was pretty much the message, right? And it's evolved to what it is today, which is now a 4-week-long session.
How
Or
many?
it's one session for
Okay.
4 weeks, and it's based. Oh, sorry about that. It's based for children up from 6 to 10, 11 to 13, again, depending on maturity and exposure, but 14 to 18, 18 to 26. And plus, and I say plus because we also work with a lot of adults who have intellectual disabilities that are sent to us as well into
that
that
makes
program
sense.
as well.
Yes.
So there's a number of different adaptations of it and versions of it. We have one specific for males, one specific for females, and we address everything from sexting to healthy relationships to exposure to pornography to peer pressure to self-esteem to mental health, AI and how that gets thrown in it. I mean, it
I want to talk about
literally
AI.
covers
Can we talk
everything.
about AI
Let's
a little
talk
bit?
about AI.
Because I mean, like, I remember one of the parts of Joanna's presentation was like when she was on stage, she demonstrated this AI program that could turn an adult into a child, and then when the child is video talking. Is that the term? On like kind of like a FaceTime type thing, or if it's like a Roblox chat, they think they're talking to another kid.
So
I'm like, what?
Yeah. And you know what? What's interesting is that was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And technology
Think
has
of what it's evolved since.
Absolutely.
So is it a
And
real, like, is there a real scare? Like, should parents be really conscious about what's happening on these kind of online games?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say to parents that at the end of the day, these games like Roblox, for example, Fortnite, oftentimes parents see these platforms as being safe because they think that they're meant for children, but it's a false safeguard. It's not, in fact, meant for children. And parents need to understand that anytime your child has the ability to engage with an adult in an online forum, it is immediately unsafe. And all of these platforms, more and more, like for example, Roblox now has like a Snapchat feature where you can actually chat and FaceTime with complete strangers online. And again,
Wild.
I mean, I don't know if you know, but Roblox is known for having a huge number of predators. So if I'm a predator and I want access to children, I don't even need to go to the playground anymore. I don't need to groom you at all. I don't need to have a physical relationship.
Pretend.
I just need to pretend. And it's incredibly easy, whether it's with, again, AI has changed the landscape drastically because they can change everything from their voice to their appearance. I mean, everything. So kids think that they're talking to a peer. They are not talking to a peer.
And then the grooming happens, and then the inviting of sending pictures, or what? How does it escalate, do you see?
Usually that's the escalation piece, is that they start playing games. Again, they start asking questions, but oftentimes it's very secret, right? So they're asking, hey, is mom or dad home? But and like a lot of these questions aren't, weird questions to begin with, right? Because they're gauging the child to understand who's around, who's listening, is anybody aware? And so they'll ask if mom or dad is around, who's in the room with you? Are you alone? And again, if, they're wearing headphones, right? So what can I say that, nobody else can hear type thing?
Or do they use like initial codings? Like there's codes for, are your parents around? Or
not really, I mean, it's a lot of it is just conversation based, right? Where they're gaining the child's trust to begin with. Again, based on, and I say this is more important than anything else, is the digital footprint piece, right? And this is incredibly important for parents as well, because for predators, all they have to know is the child's name. Very quickly, then they can find that child's information online, what school they go to, especially if mom, dad, grandma, for example, is innocently posting that about their child playing at a sports team or on a sports team. They go to a certain school, they go to this, faith center, whatever. I know all of this information about you. I know the things to say to you to get you to trust me, to like me, to think that we have so much commonality, right? So immediately I'm already drawing your child in just based on information I'm able to pull offline, right? And then we become friends. I start pulling them away from their parents, maybe from their friends. And usually that conversation does escalate to a point of a sexual nature, but it doesn't necessarily become immediately that way. It's a more so, I'll give you this if you give me that, or have you ever done this before? Would you ever do this? Right.
And have you seen scenarios where there's an invitation to meet up, or does it get to that point?
Sometimes, not as often though. I mean, the bigger issue now is, if anything, it's them acquiring digitally created images or videos of the child. And again, AI has changed that significantly in that you can create imagery as well. So like nudify apps, right? You can put in a picture and it nudifies the individual, which again is the same thing. It's being used where the child's picture is uploaded, it's made to appear naked, and the predator will send it to the child and say, look, I have this image of you already. Why not send me more? Or do what I say because now I have this of you.
I will expose this. Okay.
Right. And so sometimes they're looking for financial gain. Before they would be looking more so from what we've seen is that they've been looking more now for finances instead of more digitally created imagery, for example. So they're not really looking for videos anymore. They're more so looking for money. But again, that's not to say that they're not potentially looking for meeting up, although we're not necessarily seeing that as often.
Holy smokes.
It's scary regardless, right?
So like the images that you even post online, like on Facebook, that you think that's innocent and you're sharing with other families, that's all out for them to grab if they need.
Yep. And so again, and the thing is, I say always as well, is that it's not just predators, right? So people need to be aware of digital footprint. I'm so passionate about this. And again, I don't want to sound like the preachy, I hate, whatever technology or social media or people who post. That's not me. And yet at the same time it is, but it wasn't always me, right? Because I used to post pictures of my children, right? I mean, my children had a digital footprint before they were even born, like ultrasound pictures, right? Where again, like you're excited.
We want to share this.
We want to share with the world. And we didn't know what we didn't know. But again, as I became aware and I knew better, I deleted every single image that I could of my children offline. The scary part is that, again, once you delete something, doesn't mean that it's gone. So Facebook, Meta, first of all, owns all of my stuff. So all of the things that I ever posted now come back as memories, right? Even though it's deleted.
Really?
Oh yeah. It'll say like, on this day in 2015, this is what you were doing. And it's like, oh my God. And that kills me every time.
I deleted my child's Instagram account. Do you think it's still there?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And on top of that, even if let's say I tell myself that, okay, it's just me and Meta who have this stuff. At the same time, anybody could have downloaded the pictures that I uploaded.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
They have them in possession. And so again, I say it's not just predators, because what we're seeing happening so much is that it's other kids, right? So other kids are, I'm mad at you, I'm going to do something to you, bullying, and they're going to grandma's Facebook and they're downloading pictures that grandma, again, innocently posted. And they're using that to share in a group chat, to make fun of the other child, to nudify their picture, to manipulate in whatever capacity and distribute it, right? And again, you just don't know what you don't know, because once that is uploaded to anything, it no longer becomes yours. You lose complete control of it.
So I was reading the other day a stat about suicide being up 400% in the last 10 years. Is this something that you're seeing in your work as well?
We've definitely seen an increase in suicide ideation for sure. I mean, when it comes to that, again, it's a difficult subject. It's difficult because a lot of people will say, well, you can't just point your finger and say it's social media's fault, which of course it's not. It's not only
it's a combination of many things, but it could be like social media could be a contributing factor in making it worse,
right?
But there must be something, like something's happening in the last decade, where I also read another stat that Ontario emergency rooms, children being admitted for anxiety and mood disorders, they're seeing a 70% increase in Ontario alone.
Yeah.
So what is going on here, right?
So my favorite line right now is competence is the antidote to anxiety. Okay. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is if you want to fix anxiety, you have to make your child competent. And, competence comes with them being able to do the things, right? And again, something that we're seeing more and more is that kids are lacking resiliency, right?
Yes,
They
absolutely.
don't feel capable and they are, exposed to all of the things that, maybe we were exposed to as kids,
Mhm.
except you and I didn't have the same upbringing that they do, which
No,
is this
we
exposure to
didn't have,
screens.
right, the screens rewired their brains, so now they just look at the world differently than we did.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's not, parents sometimes is like, well, how is the screen contributing to that? And it's not the same as them watching television, right?
Right.
It's not so much them even being on a screen as much as what they're doing on those devices, right? So again, when we're talking about the short attention span, that is direct result from them watching these shorts, YouTube shorts. It's from
Yes,
the
that
TikTok
fast
videos.
information,
Absolutely.
wiring your brain for
Think slot
speed
machines,
instead of
right?
focus. Yeah.
It is literally a slot machine in their hands. These devices were
Yes.
designed to build engagement, to keep you on them, to keep
Totally like
you
a slot
hooked.
machine because you're
Uh-huh.
like, I don't want to get up because what if the next pull is the win?
Absolutely. And, and again, they're anxiety fueled, right? Like whether
Hmm.
it's Snapchat, whether it is Instagram, I mean, even for example, like a regular SMS message, right? When you look at, let's say you send somebody a message and somebody reads it, but they don't reply to you for, 24 hours or whatever. Are you not immediately thinking like, why are they not writing me back?
Yeah.
Is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? It is meant to drive anxiety, right? And, this is what also kids are doing to
Yeah.
one another in terms of playing with one another's emotions, right?
Yes.
But also like these half read capabilities like on Snapchat, for example, where you can like swipe half to see the person's message, but not open it. So you can, what they wrote, but you're just not going to reply. Again,
And you don't want them to see that you opened it.
that's right. But they can see you're online. So let's just say I send you a message and you do the half swipe, you read it, but you choose not to open it. And I know you're online. And I'm thinking,
What the
I'm a
heck? She's ignoring
13-year-old girl.
me.
I'm thinking,
She's ignoring me.
why are we
Mhm.
not friends anymore, Lana? Like, what did
I
I do to
know.
you? Or are you upset with me? Or what? Like, again, all of these things are meant to fuel my anxiety. But in addition to that, again, specifically for boys more so, again, it's controlling emotion, regulating emotions, being able to deal with all of the things, because instead of them being outside, playing, doing whatever, they're on their screens and they are
Yeah.
learning that it's instant gratification. It has to be constantly entertaining. This is why kids can't deal with boredom. They can't
Hmm.
sit still, right? I say to my kids all the time, why is it that, and I use my dad for as an example always because he was able to, do electrical work, construction, sewing, like he knew how to do it all from A to Z. And I was like, why is it that your grandfather was able to do all of these things? And then, the generation
Hmm.
after lost some of that. Okay. And the generation after that has lost that much more of it. What's the difference? Well, it's technology. And the difference between the technology that's available now that was never available when you and I were growing up, right?
Yes.
Is that it is their face on this in this thing that is constantly telling them, we want your attention, engage, 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 be here as long as possible, basically eyeballs on us, and don't do anything else, right? And they're not getting anything positive from it. Like, what life skills are they learning?
None.
None. What
No
social
social skills.
skills, right?
Yeah.
This is why we have this
Yeah.
issue with kids not being able to look
Yeah.
people in the eyes.
Yeah.
This
A
is
real
why
disconnect.
they don't understand when somebody has a sad face. It's like they don't understand what that person is feeling, right? There's a complete disconnect between kids and their understanding of like what emotional intelligence is today versus every other generation. And
So scary.
it is.
So, what should we be doing now? Like, do we do some more education around healthy use of screens and then allow some screens because it's part of our today? And then what do parents do to help guide kids around that?
I think parents are afraid of saying, you know what, I made a mistake and I gave you this thing. before I knew what it was
Mhm.
potentially going to do to you, but now I know, but now I don't want you mad at me, so we're just gonna allow you to stay on this,
Yeah,
right?
I think parents are at that now, is that because we're learning so much more. And I don't think
Yes.
that we're saying anything that you may not know in regards to what it's doing to their brain, but it's like, now what's the solution? How do I backtrack from this?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's okay for parents to know that you can pivot, right? And so again, and
Right.
the
Yes.
example I use is imagine you are on an airplane, okay? And there is a, bad severe, weather warning and the pilot says, "Hey, do you mind if I, stop somewhere, right? Or you know what? I'm just going to go through
Yeah.
this, hurricane and hope we make it out alive type thing." Like you're anticipating that the pilot is in full control and is going to say, "Actually, we're doing a detour, we're turning around and we're going back to where we started." That's their job, right? And as a parent, you have a job, and your first and foremost job is to set boundaries. And I know it's hard. And again, I'm not a perfect parent by any means, but boundaries are what kids or they make our children
Mhm.
feel safe, right? Our kids want boundaries as much as they'll tell you they don't. They need them to
They
feel safe,
do.
right?
Right.
And they do better with strict boundaries. And so as a parent, you can say to your children, "Listen, I made a mistake. Okay, we're going through this hurricane and now, but guess what? There's a way out and we're going to pivot and we're going to explore what that means." So instead of maybe taking everything away, which again, I understand it can be difficult, you can say to your children, "You know what? These are the rules that we're going to put in place. We're not going to have
Yes.
devices after a certain time. Absolutely never devices in your bedroom and no
Oh, yeah,
devices
no
at
device, yeah.
mealtime," right?
Yeah.
Again, maybe we rewind and say, "I thought Roblox was okay, but you know what? Actually, it's not. So we're not going to play
Is
on
there any other
Roblox."
ones that we should be aware of
Oh,
besides Roblox?
literally every
Minecraft?
Minecraft.
Yeah.
Well, so Minecraft is okay if it's because there's an educational component one, right? Where
Okay.
there's no access to the external sort of network of people that they can talk to strangers.
Oh,
But any
okay.
platform where they're speaking to strangers
Okay.
is
Those are the
immediately
ones.
dangerous. Absolutely. So again, like YouTube, I mean, every kid's on YouTube. YouTube sucks. Like just FYI, it's
Yeah.
awful. TikTok is awful, right? I mean, they're all awful. And I know parents sometimes think that, well, it's just, dancing. It is not just dancing, right? As soon as your child is exposed to the influence of the social media world, your influence as a parent takes a back seat. Right. And so now you have to understand that these conversations need to happen at home on a regular basis, right? So again, you need to make a pivot and say, "Listen, I know that this isn't great for you. So what are we going to do? Let's talk about what you're looking at." And it
Yes.
depends on your child's age too, right? Because again, what I talk to, my 13-year-old, I may talk differently to my 9-year-old about, but at the same time, they're exposed to the same content. So a lot of parents don't want to speak
Mhm.
to their children about pornography, right?
You have to.
The conversation in my home started when my oldest was 7 years old. And I'll tell you, my husband was in the back like, "No, no, don't do it. Don't do it."
So weird.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I was like, "Oh no, baby, like this is my time to shine here," because I knew it was an important conversation to have. Again, not a conversation I ever had growing up with
How do
my
you
parents.
start that conversation with a 7-year-old?
Well, it's, again, for me, it was an easy segue because my child had brought up the book that I was reading, which I highly recommend to everybody. It's by Dr. Gail Dines. And right now I'm forgetting the title of it. Dr. Gail Dines,
It's okay, I'll put it in the
The
show
Pornland.
notes.
It's the Pornland or sorry, it's not the Pornland. It's called Pornland. That's the name
Okay.
of the book. And it is an amazing book. And I happened to be reading it. And, it was just on the title, there's an image of two stiletto type heels, and that's sort of like the image. And so my son had seen it and he read Pornland. And so he was like, "Mommy, what's Pornland?" And my husband's like, "No, no, no." Like, and I was like, "Oh, yes. Oh, yes." Right. And so, again, it was easy because I just sat him down and I said, "Well, let me tell you about it." And, I explained to him based on what I thought he was going to understand, which
Age
was
appropriate.
age
Yeah.
appropriate. And he was like, "Okay." And we kind of left it at that, in that, it's people who engage in, intimate acts that moms and dads, do to have a baby, but they do it on TV type thing, right? And his immediate reaction, I'll never forget, was like, ew, like, why would anyone do that? And I was like, well, why do you think, right? And again, it was a good conversation for us to kind of like, I wanted to sense where he was at. And we left it at that. And then the next morning he was like, you know what? I kind of have some more questions. And I was like, okay, let's talk about it. And again, one thing that I will say, if anything, that I'm most proud of my parenting is that I'm very open and honest with my children, specifically around this topic. And my children always come to me. And again, my oldest, I know, is 13 at this time. And at some point, maybe he will stop coming to me. But up until now, they have come to me and we've talked about this very openly. And they know that they're not allowed to Google it. They're not allowed to, I will be open and honest and truthful with them about everything, but come and talk to me, because I don't want them to learn from Google. I don't want them to learn from YouTube on this subject.
Does the parental locks, do they mean anything? Kids can get by it,
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Okay. And, again, you have to understand that your kids know that Google exists, right? Like, mind you, they go to TikTok for all of their information. So immediately their TikTok is their Google.
How do you even screen out TikToks? I don't think you can.
You can't. Yeah. And they go and they learn from what are called like corn stars, because they can't refer to them as themselves as a porn star. So they refer to themselves as corn stars, and they educate your children about everything from how to bleach your anus to how to give, oral sex, and how to different, like, disgusting.
Way beyond their developmental level. I mean,
everything.
As an adult, you do what you got to do. But for kids, it's
absolutely,
it's not appropriate.
And that's the difference, right? Is at the end of the day, I don't care what you do as an adult, but I care what children are exposed to. And the reason I care is because your kids go to school with my kids, right? And so I don't want my kids exposed to that. And we know that even if your child is not on social media, is not on, let's just say, even if your child is not exposed to any devices, if your child goes to school, they have what I refer to as like secondhand smoke. Okay. It is, they are exposed to kids who are online. Guess what they're talking about?
Oh, corn stars.
Right? Corn stars.
Yeah.
They're talking about the baby oil, P. Diddy, right? Like all of the things that are going on in culture, pop culture, and also the most perverse things that you can imagine, they're talking about in grade 1. They're talking about in grade 2, grade 3. So if you think your child is too young, they're not too young, and they probably have already heard. And that's why I'm concerned, right? Not to mention what we see at Diversion is that there's children that are more and more sexualized, and they're engaging in very adult-like behavior where they're mimicking what they're looking at, which again, they've been completely desensitized to.
Right.
And they're now experimenting on one another. And then suddenly they realize like, oh, that was weird. I didn't like that, or whatever, right? And you can't undo what's been done. So that is incredibly concerning to me. And yeah, I do point the finger to social media for that, right? Because at the end of the day, they are exposed to that on TikTok. They're exposed to that on YouTube. They're exposed to that on every platform, even Twitter. I opened Twitter today. And again, I saw something that I was so disturbed by. And I thought, I didn't want to see this.
Yeah. Why did it pop up on my feed? Why is this on my FYP?
Yes. Yeah. And that is the issue with the algorithm, right? Is that you have no control over what you're going to see. And as an adult, I don't want to see these things, let alone my children.
So the only thing really you can control is what happens in your own home. The algorithm you can't control.
No.
So tell me more about how parents can perhaps build some resiliency in their kids as they navigate through this.
So, I mean, delay. If you can delay,
delay forever.
Delay forever. Yeah. At least until they're, I say, at least until they're 26, but no, I mean, listen, delay as long as possible, right? At the end of the day, I've never had a parent that's come to me and said, I love Snapchat, or like, I have no problems with my children being on social media. Like, we've seen no negative issues, right? So delay as much as possible. And, if they're already on there, then have the daily conversations. And at the end of the day, it's okay for you, like I said, to pivot and say, listen, okay, I know when we first gave you this phone, or when we first gave you access, it was sort of like a free for all, but I didn't know what I know now. And my job as a parent is to keep you safe. Again, you're the
Absolutely.
pilot of that plane. So what are you going to do to keep them safe, right? And set some family rules, but be the role model. I say to parents
Yeah.
all the time, like, model what you want them to see, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah, you can't be attached to your phone
no.
either.
And parents, I mean, again, again, I'm guilty of all of these things as well. But you go play at the park with your children. What are you doing? Swiping away, right?
Mhm.
Your kid is playing, you're swiping away. Don't do that. Don't do what you don't want them to do. Don't bring your phone to bed. Again, all of these things, show them, but also say none of us are doing it. We're putting the phones here. There's going to be a
Mhm.
safe place, but also have access to your kid's phone, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have access to your kid's phone, that's incredibly concerning. I do not believe in absolute privacy when it comes to your
Mm-mm.
child's phone or any device for that matter. If you don't have their password, I think that that's a red flag. I mean, at the end of the day, you should be highly concerned that you don't have access to what they're doing. Again,
Absolutely, it takes more effort on your part, but this is you, this is your role, and that's your job.
it is.
So,
And you know what? The thing is, again, I get it. Like, I still remember when we brought my firstborn home, and I remember I had never been around children before. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know what to do. Like,
yeah.
this child, like, I'm entrusted with his life. And nobody was given a handbook. But the difference is that we are biologically inclined to know how to care for our children, right?
Mhm.
To be able to parent, or to at least be able to take care of them, the necessities of life. What we were never given a guidebook on, nor are we given to this day, is a guidebook on how to digitally parent. And it's incredibly difficult. It's going to be different for every child.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for every family. I
And I mean,
understand
not
that.
all like we were talking about, not all screens are bad. So if you really want to go the screen route, we're talking about, I think Jonathan Haidt talked about us being storytellers. And so we
Yes.
love to look at something, perhaps it's a movie and it's family movie night on Friday night. He's not talking about that being damaging.
Right, right.
And so,
And yeah, I mean, watch shows with your children on the TV, talk
mhm,
to them, right? Again, my youngest and I love watching Sheldon together, on Netflix.
mhm.
Like, that's our show. And we snuggle up. And to me, it's my favorite. And like, he always says, like, no phones allowed. Like, I don't even bring the phone with me.
Right.
And again, we talk about where we're seeing, we're laughing. It's a shared experience. That is fine. No one's saying you can't do that, right? The
Right.
issue becomes when, especially when they are isolated and they are by themselves in their room, or, simply just unattended, and they're looking at things that you don't know what they're looking at. And trust me, they're looking at things they don't want
Oh,
you to
oh
look
yeah.
at,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean, my daughter, she'll be looking at stupid, videos on YouTube where I'm like, what are you looking at? She's like, nothing. And I'm like, like, I know what you're doing, right? Again, they're aware, right? And so it's our job to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to better digitally parent. And part of that, like I said, role modeling, boundaries, rules, but also saying to them, listen, you have, and being okay, like saying to them, like, go live life, in that I want you to go play outside.
Right.
Fine, you can have an hour of whatever video game time, you can have an hour of social media, whatever your rule is going to be. The rest of the time, I want you to go play a game, or I want you to play an instrument, or I want you to go play with friends. Go ask your friends to play, but like, go and knock on their door. Make them do the things that you did growing up. And I think that's so important, because
Yeah. I think that's
when
really good.
parents talk about what they cherish most about their childhood is, again,
The
it was
things
the
that they used to do.
freedom, right? Like,
Yeah.
we got on our bike and we'd ride all day until the sun came down. Yes. And guess what? That's when you learned how to be independent. That's when you became resilient, because you had to think in the moment. Our children are not being afforded those opportunities. They are not resilient because they are not capable. And
They're not
so,
allowed to practice those skills
right.
that contribute to the resiliency.
And this
Absolutely.
is why I
Yeah.
say, in order for them to be resilient, they need to be competent. They need to feel competent. And how are they going to feel competent? By having experience in being able to do these things and being able to respond to things that are happening in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And that means experience. Right. And that's why also ChatGPT is such a huge issue, right? Because oftentimes what kids are doing is that they're going to ChatGPT literally for everything,
They can't even think on their own. Like
so they
they're,
can't think
yeah.
in the moment,
Yeah.
I mean, I have students, so I teach at St. Clair College, and I have students who, obviously use ChatGPT for everything. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do when you're in an interview and you're asked a question and you need to answer in that moment? Or again,
Just give me 1 second. Let me chat this.
right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? Like, hold on a second, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able to speak on the fly, and you need to be able to make eye contact, and you need to be able to think and also respond and, potentially de-escalate the situation. Like, how are you going to have experience navigating doing these things if you've never experienced that?
What do you teach at the
face-to-face?
college? Completely off topic here.
What do I teach?
Yeah.
So I teach in the criminal justice program, and I teach a number of different things. Like right now we're talking about ethics in the law, and I bring up social media platforms with them all the time.
Yeah.
Talking about, whether or not these platforms ethically should be held liable for the fact that they're creating these platforms that they know are egregious and that they're causing to like these.
What's the accountability there? Like
there is none.
There's none. Brutal. So tell me more a little bit about, because sometimes schools also are like kind of caught in the middle because kids spend, 6 to 8 hours at school. And so is there anything that teachers and community service providers can do in terms of navigating this in the classroom?
Well, so I'm a big believer in phone bans, and I know that like in schools, and I know that for schools, it's a real challenge. And again, provincially speaking, basically the province has said, oh, this is like, we're banning phones, but we're leaving it up to the individual school boards. And then the individual school boards say, well, we're banning phones, but it's up to the individual school. And then the individual schools are like, we're going to ban phones, but, we have these parents that are complaining saying,
they can't
how am I going to reach my child? And I need to be able to communicate with my child. And again, to that, I say at the end of the day, this has to be a partnership, right? It has to be a partnership between home, like parents.
We didn't have that when we were kids.
No.
Like you just call the school,
you call the
leave
school.
a message.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right. And the phones in the school create an issue for literally everybody. Like nobody wants them there, right? And these parents that are fighting this are causing more harm than good. Again, unless your child's an anomaly and has some medical, emergency, like, which again, at the end of the day, maybe they shouldn't be at the school. Like, I imagine like if it's that critical, you probably have them at home, but anyhow, whatever. Point being, if you need to get a hold of them, that's what the office is for, right? And the reason why I say that it causes more harm than good is because you have this slot machine that's basically in your child's hand at all times. You can't tell me that they are not incentivized to continuously look at that. And then what are they doing with it in the bathroom? What are they doing with it, when they should be actually paying attention to the teacher, or, spending time eating their lunch, chatting with friends, whatever.
Or the bullying and exclusion can happen.
Not
so
to
much
mention. Yes. So there has to be, I think, a partnership between schools, home, and also community partners where there is an education piece. You've got, again, whether you've got presentations coming in, Youth Diversion does a number of presentations, but, if you have an educational component where you're talking about digital literacy, but also helping parents understand that at the end of the day, if you delay and your friends or your child's friends, parents delay, then it's not as if you're the only one or your child is the only one that doesn't have the device or the phone, right? And that's the strongest argument that kids will use is, well, everyone has one. Everyone has one. Well, guess what? Everyone doesn't have one, because I know Bobby doesn't have one and Susie doesn't have one and, Johnny. And so again, if everybody doesn't have one, then you're not the only one who doesn't have one. And it doesn't seem now as if you're the odd one out, but we need to do this together.
Yeah, parents, can we unite
We
here?
need to do this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start wrapping this up because we are running low on time. But is there some community resources that we could link our listeners to prior to closing today?
Oh, I'd love for you to link some resources from Youth Diversion. Absolutely. Our website.
Okay. Youth Diversion. Okay, I'll put that in the show notes for you.
We have a number of different videos that we created that talk about everything from sexting to bullying, you name it, about all the online things that are made in like an animated version for kids that are easy to watch. They're several minutes long, so it's not crazy for their attention spans because we know we can't, have anything too long.
Fast.
Right. Yeah. So we have that, but we also deliver presentations in school. So if you want your children to get some education
thing. Yeah, definitely. The schools can reach out to you and talk about about that? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. So we do a class, we do auditorium full presentations. I deliver presentations to parents all the time. Again, sometimes it's easier
Mm.
when you have a presentation for parents that everybody can come
Oh, that would
to.
be so good.
And then you can have a conversation thereafter. Like, again, at the last school that I did, I had a parent that reached out and said, hey, like, I'm going to make it like a girls' night with my parent, like my girlfriends, and like make them all come. And I was like, perfect. I love that. Let's do it, whatever,
Yeah.
however way. Right. But at the end of the day, if you're able to build a community around something and to be able to then have these conversations, it makes things easier, right? Because sometimes having that conversation is the hardest part because it's awkward and you don't necessarily know how to start. But you can always say like, oh yeah, I saw Joanna talking about this and that made sense. Or what did you think about that? And suddenly it's like, well, you know what? Maybe we're going to start delaying, or maybe we're going to start pivoting. And then, again, it's a conversation that's like, oh, we'll do that too. And okay, we're going to do that too. And now it's more of a, united effort anyhow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so before I end today, I always have 3 takeaways for you, but I feel like I want to ad lib what those 3 takeaways are because they're, well, I think one of them should be that it's okay to pivot for sure. And then the second one should be delay, 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 delay. What do you think the third one should be? The takeaway for today?
I would say that competence is.
Oh, yeah, competence.
Competence is the antidote to anxiety.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So a big thanks to Joanna Conrad for sharing her insight and heart for youth. And thank you to our listeners for wanting to know better and do better. So if you found this interesting and think it's important for others to also be aware, so please share, tag, follow, subscribe, do all the things to keep this conversation going. So that's it for this episode of Anchored Minds, where change happens with intention. Thank you.